Hey everybody, this is meteorologist Brad Petrovich for SkiSoutheast.com, and we've got some bad news and good news. We're still early in the season, which is good news. The bad news, nothing really cold coming up this first weekend in December, but there's really good news looking into the second week, and especially that second weekend. And you probably have seen me talk about it. You probably have seen some other meteorologists talk about it. Let me get right to the details of what's going to happen. So here's a look at this week. Now, pretty mild pattern. We've got this southwest flow, and if you remember last winter, you remember a lot of this, the blowtorch I call it. And you don't want to see a southwest flow. That's horrible for snowmaking and skiers in the southeast. We've got a little backdoor front that's going to arrive Thursday into Friday, and there's a small window that we could see some snowmaking opportunities in the Virginias, maybe even a little bit of rain-snow mix, but it's very marginal at best. I'm not overly excited about that. I'll show you the temperatures below 32. You don't see a lot of them on Wednesday. Thursday, not much. As we go to Friday morning, you could see there's a little hint. We might have some near freezing temperatures up here in parts of West Virginia, Maryland, maybe even Virginia, but it doesn't last long. That's really nothing to get excited about. This, though, is something to get excited about. Big pattern change coming up after this weekend. You see the zonal flow, and you'll hear me talk about zonal flow every once in a while. That's just your basic west to east movement. That's pretty blah weather. Nothing really happens. You don't have really warm weather, really cold weather. It's just kind of whatever. But as we go into next week, many signals in the atmosphere are pointing to what we refer to as atmospheric blocking, even a sudden stratospheric warming event. All of these are phrases you probably have heard before. What they mean is cold air Arctic intrusions into the U.S. Now, the pattern is there, but I should caution you, the pattern is there with a big ridge developing out here over the Gulf of Alaska, another big ridge up into the North Atlantic into Greenland. This means cold air is on the move south. But there's always a big caveat. You don't always know exactly where the heart of the cold air is and how deep it's going to get. These are things that aren't going to develop until when they happen. But this pattern is shaping up going into next week. We're talking Thursday the 7th going into the following weekend. If you look carefully, this is the 500 millibar chart. We've got this big old trough digging in across eastern Canada, and yes, that is a small little lobe of the polar vortex. Now the polar vortex is still up here, but there's little lobes, and one of them's coming down into parts of North America, eastern Canada, even into the Great Lakes. This type of pattern is pretty cold weather. In fact, we've got cross-polar flow. If you look carefully, the air out of Siberia is coming across the pole, coming down straight out of Canada and into the southeast and curving. This is going to pick up moisture off the Great Lakes, probably going to be a pretty good northwest flow snow event depending on the orientation of this. So this is a really good sign. At the very least, this is great news for snowmaking here in the southeast. And this is a look at those temperatures. And you could see that little polar vortex low break off and move south. And notice as you look up here into eastern Canada, we've got this fetch of moisture coming around the Great Lakes. Again, this is not any storminess. I don't see any big east coast or southeast storm, but this Arctic air coming across the Great Lakes will pick up some moisture, and this is probably going to be a pretty good northwest flow event on top of maybe a little bit of lake enhancement with any front that comes down. Now, as far as snowfall in the short term, obviously, there's a no-go here. I don't see anything over the next 48 to 72 hours. And if you look at my Ski Southeast mountain forecast, North Carolina, Tennessee, a big fat 0 between Wednesday and Monday for snowmaking. A small window, and I almost hesitated to put this on here, but maybe Saturday, maybe a small chance of some snowmaking up there in West Virginia, Maryland, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that. So the good news, this pattern change is going to spell both cold air and likely a little bit of natural snow. And there are some signs it could stick around, though it is very early. So early warm-up here in December. I wouldn't call it super warm. It's nothing like last year. It's certainly not great. But this pattern change coming up next week really bears watching, because that next weekend in December, not this first weekend, but the second weekend, and likely going into the third weekend, is looking really promising. Whether or not it sticks around through the holidays, it's still too early to say, but certainly the next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting as we go towards December, especially that second half. Stay tuned. As always, think snow. I'll do another update going into the weekend and make sure that we can continue to see this pattern set up. But this week, just know it's not a great week this week. This is we got spoiled with an early start around Thanksgiving. We're going to have a thaw here this week before we see the big cold air come in next week.